Hi, colleagues. This is John Fischetti. Welcome to episode 6 of We Will Get Through This, Transformative Leadership for Disruptive Times. And I'm so delighted to have two of my favorite people in the world and two of the world's most important professors in the area of physical activity and nutrition, Professor Dave Lubans and Professor Phil Morgan, who do incredible work not only around New South Wales or the country, but around the world in helping to impact the lives, learning, and activity, and using some really major research that they're conducting and are part of that's actually changed people's lives and improved them. I appreciate what you and your teams do and all you do for our students as we prepare the next generation of PhD students and new teachers of health and physical education. Thanks for being with us today.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we've got a really interesting time. I was critiqued by a colleague in English for saying a very unique time, because unique already means unique and you don't have to modify that and say very, but I'll call this very unique time because probably except for wartime or major disasters like earthquakes, major storms, there hasn't been in our lifetime something like this where the world basically shuts down. And we are really aiming this podcast series, Dave and Phil, to our school leaders, principals, deputy principals, middle level leaders, head teachers who are really trying to keep momentum together in the school year. We know we'll be back, but we don't know when. And in this online mode, or I call it school at home mode, it's just a very different reality. I'm actually worried, Scott, our colleague who's co-hosting this series, is really worried that maybe those leaders aren't taking care of themselves. And particularly, what would you advise a very high achieving, amazing principal to do to make sure they take the time for their own well-being and their physical activity and nutrition in particular over the next few weeks, maybe few months?
Do you want to go first, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Very unique. It's certainly unprecedented. And as there was a kind of a phase of novelty and thinking, hang on, how long is this going to last? But as recently as this morning, now we know that particularly New South Wales, we're going to be in a similar situation in terms of the lockdown rules for the next 3 months. So I think it's even more pertinent to start to think about establishing a routine that's healthy, and that's both mentally and physically healthy for everyone. And probably what's been one of the things that's been positive in this is there has been a focus and a realisation of the importance of physical activity and exercise in this lockdown mode. So certainly taking care of yourself because of the association between exercise and mental health is really important. It'd be good to be able to share some of our good strategies for school leaders, but for everyone to be able to maintain or increase their exercise in this important time.
Yeah, well, let's start with a good suggestion for somebody who is so overwhelmed by the reality of trying to keep their school going, getting their teachers posting online and trying to keep their own family together. What would you recommend for somebody who really had a New Year's resolution to do this, but just hasn't gotten to it, and here we are in April?
Yeah, I think the foundation of this is firstly to lower the expectations. This is not normal. What you'd normally expect students to achieve and yourself to achieve, you've got to adapt and establish a new normal, which is really important. I think the two things to think about in this area is the importance of overall movement. So how many steps we're actually getting in the day, and then also finding ways to get some huff and puff exercise as well. And so in those periods, doing an exercise session, which might increase your heart rate, is important, but you may be sitting down most of the day on screens and Zoom meetings and remote delivery. So they're the two things. Can we sort of aim to get overall movement up and having those movement breaks and finding time for outside, but also finding time to do some higher intensity and to build that into the day? And some of the research around the behavioural science would suggest that we need to plan for this, to block it into the day, to ink it, don't think it, so it doesn't become a black cloud over your mind all day thinking what I have to do. And then to ensure you self-monitor. So if you're at the start of the week, I'm going to do my exercise or activity at this point, and this point, and then think of ways you can get some social support. So whatever your household looks like at the moment, to find time for some one-on-one, some family activity, or to do that. They're three really important things to be able to maintain that physical activity regime.
That's fantastic. We'll come back to a few other examples. Dave, a lot of your research involves understanding the benefits of this potential short bursts of activity. You want to take us through what you think might be good for a school leader, for themselves and maybe their family who's been cooped up now a week and a half and probably going to be a little bit longer.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think that Phil was sort of touching upon, and I think you're alluding to the idea of high intensity interval training, like these short bursts of vigorous activity or huff and puff activity that get your heart racing, it gets your blood flowing, and we know this has such powerful effects on a whole range of outcomes. And even from bringing it down to like a concentration point of view, we now know that that there is a relationship between how vigorous the activity you are and the associated cognitive benefit. So I'm sort of seeing this with even testing this out with my own children, that if we get in and do a little HIIT-based session in the morning, which might be anywhere from 4 minutes to 10 minutes, we don't really do it for much longer than that, their ability to sit down and concentrate is enhanced enormously. And there's now really powerful evidence that, there's some benefit from standing and some benefit from light activity and a little bit more from moderate, but the strongest benefit comes from that vigorous activity. And we also see this flow-on effect of actually feeling better from a neurobiological mental health perspective as well. So great evidence around the physiological, improving your cardiometabolic health, but those things aren't what we're really focusing on at the moment. We know that if you do this exercise, these little bite-sized chunks of activity every day, you feel better and you're a more effective worker. And I think that to me is a really important starting point. And that's something, back to Phil's point about routine. I'm working at home with my children, and that's part of our now routine, that about 10:30 in the morning, we set aside 10 minutes. And that's our first little kind of activity break where we get up and we might do one in the backyard, or we might put an activity on the TV. It could be a combination of aerobic-based activity, such as running on the spot or star jumps, integrated with some muscular fitness activity like some push-ups or some tricep dips. The idea is work really hard, have a little break, work hard, and the benefits are so powerful.
That's fantastic. And if people were thinking, I don't have the proper gym equipment or the right exercise bike, well, apparently we've all hoarded giant bags of rice. Could I be lifting a few of those and creating my own slalom course around my house? Or what format can we use if we don't have a proper place to do this stuff?
Having no place or no equipment is actually no excuse. I mean, really, there's actually really good evidence that even just doing body weight exercises is as good for people's health as going to a gym and lifting weights and using external resistant devices. So pick up some weights if you want to make it a little bit harder, but there's so much you can do with body weight exercise that it's just about your creativity, about looking at what's available on YouTube, finding things that are going to be important and enjoyable. And certainly from a behavioral motivation perspective, variety is essential. So mixing it up, trying different activities, and letting, if you are doing it with others, just to sort of, you're talking about what you might be doing for your team. One of the things we've now started, and tomorrow will be our second week, is a group Zoom HIIT session where our team get together and we do a 10 to 15 minute session. They can bring their family members in as well. And the idea is that it's a bit of a chance to sort of touch base with our work colleagues, and to also do an exercise session where you don't actually have to think about it. Someone else, we take it in turns to come up with that session.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. Phil, how rigorous a set of activities do you recommend for people with young children or with sort of mixed abilities to take on board some of this stuff? What would you recommend might be just even a household thing? If we're in a rainy day and we just want to continue to do this stuff, what do you recommend?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Firstly is that all the things that Dave is mentioning that are important for school teachers and principals and leaders, you could apply most of that to all the children you're teaching in primary school and high school. The benefits of aerobic fitness, the benefits of muscular strengthening activities, which was part of the physical activity guidelines, the importance of movement breaks and high intensity and routine. And so that's a really key consideration when you're planning your programming and from remote learning and scheduling out what the children need to be doing, that they still also need to be doing that, so you can actually be modelling those activities. But for families and for those at home, again, thinking about ways that you can maximize the amount of movement that you can within the confines of the lockdown. So if you can get out of the house and outside and go for a walk, thinking about those overall steps. But I'd be looking at doing a workout every day, and that workout that gets the heart rate up. And so by doing that, planning it in, as Dave mentioned, it can just be a short stint, but we've done that in our program. We've done that with preschoolers. We've done that with primary school kids and demonstrated the benefits for those. And there's a saturation of workouts on YouTube or things that you can watch, and some of the schools are doing those as well. Doing as a family adds an additional source of motivation. But in particular, when you're working with children, variety is key, but autonomy is another really important piece of the motivation. And so that is where, when you're establishing a routine, hey, on Tuesday, would you like to do a go noodle? Would you like to do this? Or would you like to go at the back and do a circuit? Your choice. And so by then, as opposed to, hey, you must come out the back and do a workout with me. So giving them some ownership in the planning, giving them some say in what activities you're doing will lead to a more intrinsic motivation to complete the activity. So then it's not a battleground, because we're in this now for a few months. And so I think in these early weeks, as we're settling in and homeschooling and working from home, there's some real challenges with that for families. So with the holidays coming up, I think it's a great opportunity for families to sit down and actually go, okay, we're going to look at some planning in of what we're doing, but explain to the children why this is important, because it's tough for them to understand what's going on.
That's great advice. And I think both of you have been hinting at, but the mental health benefits of doing this on a daily basis are actually profound. We're in a space where a lot of people are stressed, they're uncertain, and we don't have an endpoint that's obvious to us at this time. A lot of people are financially worried, and some people now are possibly eating too many bags of chips as a way to just vent their frustration at the planet or to this COVID thing. So if you were going to say to folks, one of the benefits is that you'll actually be able to chill a bit, calm a bit, and be sort of able to take each day as it comes. You've been in research that's shown actually that's demonstrable, not just sort of fake news, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the acute benefits of physical activity for mental health are just profound. And I mean, anyone who, who's ever kind of even just stepped outside and gone for a walk will tell you that they automatically feel better. And so the more opportunities we get for people to do that movement and to experience. And interestingly, one of the slightly challenging things with vigorous activity is that when you are working at a really high intensity, it is natural for you to feel uncomfortable, and that doesn't make you feel as good at the time. Mm-hmm. But what we've seen in our studies and what we know from our decades of research, there is what's referred to as a rebound effect. So that you may be feeling a little bit tired and exhausted and not as good right at the peak of that hard interval. But as you kind of finish in that rest period, and then even 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, you actually go above and beyond where you were feeling already. So, I mean, the idea of exercise for mental health is just, I think is really pleasing that the government's allowing people and encouraging people to get out and be physically active and do exercise, because I can't imagine the problems we would be having in society if they tried to take that away from us.
Particularly the importance of being able to get outside, and our research in families has demonstrated, and another tip, coactivity, when you're active together as a family, and that could be one-on-one if needed, depending on your family, has led to improvements in the self-esteem of kids, but also the quality of the relationships and the functioning of families. So it's really important that there's opportunities to do that together. And actually, just as a bit of a recent announcement, our team have agreed, a lot of our programs have been postponed, community programs. So what we're actually going to develop and lead is set up a YouTube channel, which I'll be leading, and having little 15-minute one-stop shop workouts for families or whoever at home that includes ideas, evidence-based ideas to focus on aspects of rough and tumble play, fitness together, but also an opportunity to continue developing our physical skills and sports skills, given there's no community sport anymore. So watch this space. We'd be happy to share that so people can follow that rather than being saturated with multiple workouts. They can just see this one program, which gives away all our secrets from our programs.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Would you think that it'd be a good idea to set a target? Let's say people have been a little bit physically inactive in their leadership roles in the last couple of years, that we might set a target in the next 30 days. You should be able to walk a kilometer comfortably. And then maybe if we're going to be 3 months, that by then you might be able to get it to 5, not to try to go for it all at once, break it up, but maybe have a goal that at the end of this, you might be able to walk a park run or be able to, ride your bike for 15 minutes without huffing and puffing. What would be a starting goal for someone who has an end goal that might be a big event once we're back out of social isolation and actually doing things as communities again?
I think the tough one with that, John, is that it's all going to depend upon where they're at the moment. So
Yep.
if they haven't been doing anything at all, then being able to walk a kilometre or a couple of kilometres would be a really good starting point. But I suspect many of your listeners are, if they're listening to you, you've probably had some influence on them, and they're probably already taking care of their health to some extent. I think what we're seeing with COVID-19, and it's a real positive to me. I just noticed the amount of people outdoors walking now, that has really increased in the last couple of weeks. So, in terms of a specific goal, I think I would encourage people to think about where they're currently at, what can they comfortably do, and then look to set a goal based upon their current fitness standard.
And anybody who has a chronic illness, we could do the tele visit with their GP to make sure they don't overdo it.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. And in our programs with families who, say for adults, if you want an objective figure and you have a monitor, a gadget around your wrist or a pedometer and things you can order, 10,000 steps is a bit of a guide. But for some people who are doing 4,000 steps to jump to 10,000, so we often say set a goal initially just to increase what you're doing currently by 10%. And then you can wait a week or two, depending on circumstances, and set another goal. So
yes, that's perfect.
Goals is really important, but it's got to be realistic. And then you establish a bit of a ballpark for what's reasonable for you. But with activity, more is better.
Yep. Well, I really want to thank you so much for joining us on this, just a beginning of a conversation with two of the world's global experts in these topics, Professor Phil Morgan and Professor Dave Lubans from the University of Newcastle in Australia. And as people get more interested in these topics, I know you'd be happy to hear from them, and we'll post email addresses, and they might want to get in touch just to follow up on some of the resources. But you are role models for what we're doing, and we really want to express how much we appreciate what school leaders have been doing to transition schools in such a short period of time to do this school at home. But what we don't want to do is leave out their health and well-being and the well-being of their team. We're going to need them now. We're going to particularly need them on the other side of this. And you guys are great to take your time from your next HIT training session that you have probably coming up here. We've already been online too long. We should have been 10 minutes of busyness. But thanks for your role models, your research you're doing, and for being on with us today. And to all of you listening, I think what I heard is we ought to set this in our diary. We need to do stuff every day. Shorter bursts frequently during the day could be just as good. Might even be better than the longer ones. Whatever it is, let's not use this chance to get our couch worn out by our sitting there too much. We really do need to get up and move, take our families with us, and we'll actually have some mental health benefits that could get us through this, and maybe more discipline. So when we get back to it, the insanity of the day-to-day grind doesn't take away the time we built in now to take care of ourselves. Thanks so much. You guys are great. We'll see you and talk to you soon. Look forward to high-fiving for real whenever we're allowed to do that again.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for having us, John. Okay. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.